thought it'd be fun to sorry, I thought it'd be fun to make a trade episode where if you look at our team standings, we are the third best team in the East. North Bay's got a really good squad. I do think I'm a little bit better than them, but it looks they're definitely outperforming me so far in the season. If you look at their goals for, it's about the same, but you can see the difference would be on defense. But I think that's more of just kind of maybe an outlier because their defense isn't that great, and I don't think they have an elite goalie. This guy's playing very well, better than my goalies. So he might be part of the reason, but I think that's more something that will balance out throughout the course of the season. I don't think they're really like that 15-20% better defensively than me, as the stats indicate. I think that's just a little bit of a small sample size. We're both pretty much the same 2-to-1 almost ratio, so I think I hopefully will be able to overcome Battalion later in the season. I think I have a little better squad than an 18-10 record because there's a couple of pretty bad teams in the East. If you look at the West, there's only the one 9-win team, and then if you look at the East, you got these like two teams in the division here that are just absolutely terrible, and then one terrible team in this division. So you got three teams that are at under 9 wins, and then you have a couple that are barely above that, and that's with playing against all these bad teams over and over. So these 13-win teams probably would only be 9 or 10-win teams in the West. So the East is pretty bad this season. That's why Oshawa is just dominating because they're not that great either. Like I told you, it seems like really they just have those two really good centers. The rookie Cheryl is one of the best 16-year-olds I've ever seen, and then Patrick, the 18-year-old. So the scary thing is they'll probably both be back next year. Patrick might make the NHL actually. He's probably maybe one of the best players in the league. I don't know how high he was drafted, first round. So he might make the NHL. He grew an inch too. He was only 6'3" last time, so that's pretty cool. He's a monster. So yeah, he's we'll see if he's back next season. I think it's probably about 50-50 chance. He's definitely good enough in the NHL. It just depends on the team and stuff and the fit or whatever, but we won't worry about that too much. But anyways, so that's the really good team, and then North Bay is a pretty good team, and I'm a good team. It's like us three are kind of head and shoulders above the rest. We got a couple 14-win teams here that have pretty weak third and fourth lines, only one or two good defensemen, and they don't really have that superstar 17-18 forward, so I don't think they're quite as, again, I think that's more of a product of the East being really bad. I don't think Peter Road would really be like a second place team in the West. And then if you look at Mississauga, they have this really good Russian winger, it looks like, who's a monster. Probably one of the best shots I've ever seen. They got a couple really good forwards here. That five of their top 6 players are forwards, and the other one is a goalie. And then they had the guy that was a top 10 pick on defense last year. So they definitely have a little bit of a weak spot. Their best right D looks pretty weak. He's only an 8. So that team has actually got some really good forwards and wingers, and they have a pretty good goalie who's 6'6". Oh yeah, I remember this guy who's top 10 pick, right? Yeah. So Mississauga looks pretty solid too. So I'd say Mississauga, Oshawa, and North Bay would probably be the other 3 to me that would probably make up the top 4 from this conference. So I kind of want to. I know we're focused on the 2013 class, which are the 17-year-olds now, which will be 19 2 years. Will be the big year when I have everybody. Pretty much everyone on my team will be a 19-year-old starter and have one of the best, most mature teams I've ever had. Because Peterson, McDowell, and then all of this bottom 6 guys are all going to be back. The only guys we lose, we've had a couple bad injuries, so we've lost Beaver for just a couple weeks. We lost Widmer for a good chunk of the season. He's got some really bad injury problems. I think that's true. Last year, his rookie year, he played like every game, and then last year he got injured for like 2/3 of the season. I think it was 2 major injuries last year. He had 2-month, came back, and then another 2-month injury or something like crazy. Actually, yeah, we can look at his injury history. I think you'll see it's pretty bad. So yeah, he missed 126 games, and then I guess he only had the one. Yeah, so it was one pretty long one last year. He missed pretty much the whole season right after September when the season started, and then this year he's had the 5-day one, and now he has a 41-day one. So he'll be gone for quite a while. But yeah, we'll have. If you look at the roster here, almost everyone back in the next couple of years. So we did want to kind of go all in this year a little bit because I think we're definitely good enough to win a championship, but we do have quite a bit of assets built up. We don't really need to draft too many guys this year because we have so many young 17-year-olds. So we don't really need to draft a lot. So we can definitely trade away quite a bunch and still have really good teams next couple of years. So I think what I want to do is I want to get a top-notch winger because Widmer keeps getting injured. We have Widmer and Beaver both injured, our 2 like 15 rated left and right wingers in the second line to make that second line look really elite. But I want to get one more top guy because Widmer seems to keep getting injured. I'm a little nervous he'll be injured again. And also, there's always an injury or two when it comes to playoffs. You don't want to go in the playoffs and then have a team be one player short. So you can never really have enough talent. So I'm not too worried about fit. I assume someone will get injured. Worst case scenario, we have a really good 13 to 15 winger on the third or fourth line. But definitely, I think if we can trade for one more top-notch winger. If you look at the power play, right now we have that elite shooter Dodson, Peterson together, and then I had Beaver on that top line. So what I kind of want to do is get just like another offensive forward. So I was looking around the teams, and I try to make it really realistic, and I don't try to trade for good players from the good teams because that wouldn't really happen in real life. So I look at all the last place teams. This division's really good. They have some good teams. Even the last place team is like almost playoff team there. So the two weak teams in the West are London and Owen Sound. So Owen Sound doesn't have too much. They have this really good goalie. I'm decent at goalie. I don't think I want to trade the goalies. I'm just going to stick with the guys I have. They're pretty talented, and they're both back next year. Both multi-year players for me, and so I don't think that's a route I want to go. I was looking at this couple of these guys here. They got a really good right winger here. He's like kind of a leader. He's got some good speed, good skater, good offense. So he's a guy I think would be a really good guy to trade for. Let's see here. He's played. Yeah, so he played out west. There's a glitch in the game where about too many guys somehow get released to free agency, and then they always swap teams. So you get a ton of guys in the OHL from the west, a ton of guys in out west from the OHL and the Q and stuff. So something weird's happening in the free agency with the computer teams. I don't really take advantage of it. I just stick with my drafted guys. But every year, there's guys that are like the fourth pick of the draft that somehow get released to free agency. It's a glitch in the game. But I figured at first it's kind of annoying because it's like, well, that sucks. A team that goes to rebuild and get a pick. But if you really think of it in the grand scheme of things, since I'm not taking advantage of it and they're all computer teams, no one's really taking advantage of the glitch. And so, really, at the end of the day, it kind of balances everything out. Because what happens is, it seems like guys just kind of. It's not like 5 top guys go to one team or something. It's like they might not be on the team they get drafted for, but they just go. So I find it kind of as one of those stupid things that I guess in a way just balances itself out. Doesn't seem like one team gets like 3 top 5 picks in 1 year or something. You'll see like a team that gets really good, like an Oshawa or something, and they'll have like a winger they sign as a free agent that was like the 3rd pick of the draft in the queue or something like a couple years forward. And it seems a little unfair, but it's like if you look, it's really stupid. Like all the second round picks seem to disappear. So I just in a weird way just let it be, and I don't glitch, so it's a computer thing, but just seems like it kind of like balances itself out. You never see too many teams that are too stacked, and everyone seems to find a way. So it's kind of cool in a way because it's just a weird thing that wouldn't happen in real life, but somehow it finds a way to balance out the game, and every team seems to have like that one player that's like a star from another division, but I've never seen a team have more than like 2 or 3 top players from another league, so for whatever reason it seems like they're kind of spreading out throughout the teams pretty equally. I've definitely seen top teams with a couple guys, but not like they don't have like 2 guys in WHL that are 18 rated defensemen or something. I've never seen that happen. Like in this team, for example, like almost everyone's from Ontario. If you were to look down, and then all of a sudden it's just like they have this one guy from out west, like um, so, or whatever that guy was, the guy I was just looking at. But yeah, so that's just kind of like how I've left it. So you'll notice some weird stuff, like there's some French Canadians on the OHL teams and stuff. But yeah, so that'd be a good guy to trade for. I already traded for London's good 19-year-old D-man. I didn't want to give up what it would take to get Peterson because he's probably best D-man in the league, and I didn't think in real life there'd be a realistic trade where I get him. Even though they're kind of like a bad team, they'd probably trade him away for a boatload. I didn't want to give up like a top first round pick, 16-year-old, and like 4 first round, second round picks, which it would probably take to get him in real life. That'd be like trading Drysdale or something. Like he would just, yeah, to get him back, you would need to give him a franchise player. You wouldn't just be able to kind of give him a second tier player and some draft picks. So I didn't think that was too realistic. And although it'd be really insane to get him, that'd be just a huge trade because that'd be like the best defenseman I ever had since Brandon Clark. He's a crazy defensive player. So yeah, you get him, and then they had this 18-year-old I didn't really want to trade for because in real life, top-notch 18-year-olds would be so valuable because you get them for a year and a half, not just that 1 year. So that'd be a guy that will be like their star player next season. So I didn't really want to give up what it took to get him either. So I thought I'd prefer trade for like 19-year-old from a rebuilding team for a half-season rental. It's a little more like easy to acquire those guys. So I think the best option I found, I just looked for a few minutes. I haven't looked super hard, but I didn't really look through Ottawa too much. They have their top players actually those guys I traded last year. I gave them Ronald and Rusk, their top defenseman and their top forward. That was that blockbuster trade where I got that McDonald, like my best prospect, that 17-year-old right winger. I gave him Ronald and Rusk. Rusk was a second round pick for me. He's actually their captain, and number one lefty. He's a stud there. And then they got Ronald's their leading scorer. There's a really bad team, but pretty much as a point-to-guy game last season, 20 minutes a game, and he's the guy that I was so stacked he wasn't even really playing for me. He wouldn't have really played and been a top 6 forward till this year. And even this year, he's only 10 rated. Like he probably wouldn't have been. He probably would have been like a third liner for me because I'm so stacked with Beaver and Widmer and all those wingers they got. So Ronald was the guy that was really talented. And I knew he'd be first line winger on kind of a lesser team. So I traded him and then that defenseman and a couple second round picks to get McDonald, who was the 17th pick of the draft that year. And that was a great trade because McDonald's turned out to be one of the best prospects I've ever had. And I thought that was a really fair trade, giving a team a guy who's their leading scorer 2 years in a row and their top D man and a couple second round picks. So that's definitely a big time return for them. So I thought that was a fair trade. And then, so I don't really see too many guys I want to trade for except for Niagara. This is a big one I want to make. So if you look at Niagara, right before I started the episode, I was peeking at them. They have 2 really good targets for me. If you look at my team, this here is my depth chart for this season. I have Widmer's injured right now, Beaver's injured right now, but if you look, I got a couple 10-rated wingers in that third line. So if I take any injuries for those top 4 wingers there, top 6 players, pretty significant drop off. I dropped right off to the 17-year-olds that are all but 10 rated. So I figured maybe it'd be cool to get one more like 19-year-old last year player that was pretty elite. So then he could be like on a third line and really make that third line kind of a lot better. And then just kind of rotate, maybe bench Forsey or something. But there's always injuries, like I said. But I think the plan was to get one more kind of elite guy, I think, or will be the plan. And that would be solidify. He could play on that second line for most of the season with Widmer's out for another like 2 months. And then, so he'd pretty much spend most of the season on the power play in the top 6 and all that. So I think if you look at this team, that's kind of the trade I want to go with. I definitely, like I said, I don't want to trade for like an elite 17, 18-year-old and give up like a shitload of picks. I'd rather get a pretty really good 19-year-old, maybe give up like a decent young player that's not like going to be a future first liner type guy for me, and then give up like a couple seconds in a third and get one of the best 19-year-olds in the league. I think would be a good trade. So if you look at them, I think the best target would be this crazy Russian guy. He's got over a point a game. He's absolutely dominating. He's got 22 minutes a game. That's over a point a game, like the worst team in the league that's getting destroyed every game. So this is a guy that potentially could be almost like a 2-point a game player in a top team in the league, like Mir Oshawa. Yeah, playing with an elite center like Peterson. I don't know if he'd play it. Maybe could play on that first line. I probably wouldn't move Dobson off the left wing, and this guy probably take most of the season to learn how to play right wing to the top level. But probably be a second liner for me while Winder's out in that left wing. Probably playing the power play in that first unit though, and I can move Dobson to the point or something like that. But so this guy I think I want to trade for. I have 1 foreign spot open, which is sweet. He's a Russian dude. He was the 8th pick of the import draft. He's a first-round pick in the NHL draft. So he's a guy that would take a pretty significant offer. So if I look trading for him, the other guy I could trade for is just a little bit of a step down. He's just as pretty much good offensively and skating. It's just the defense would be a big difference. So the other guy would be like a first-line, like 2-way player. This guy would be more so probably a little cheaper to get. He's not quite as good, but he's still a really solid player. And same thing, like a point-a-game player the last 2 seasons. And he's a guy that would definitely be I almost like this guy a little bit more actually now that I talk it out loud because he's a right winger, which I think is this is a guy that can play both wings. So he's a right winger and then he can play left wing in the power play, and he'd be the right shot left winger in that power play for the one-timers, which would be really nice with Peterson as a good passer. I think so. This guy is actually a pretty nasty target. Plus, he speaks English. I feel like some of those foreign guys don't adjust as well because in the game they don't speak English. So I don't know if it makes their play not as good or something. But I think Stedall might be a little better target the more I think about this because he's a little bit cheaper and because he's not quite the defensive player. And he's still decent. Like he's got 12 defense already, which is solid. I just mean compared to his offense, he's definitely he's kind of an average player in defense, whereas he's like a very good player in offense compared to the other guy who's more of a star player because he's good at both. This guy's like obviously like a first-round NHL pick. He's got the 13 and 14 stick checking read and top-notch positioning and skating. So yeah, it's top stamina too. So this guy's definitely pretty nasty. I just realized right now that he actually has basic English. That's really cool. He must have picked that up. So I thought that was a glitch in the game where they didn't learn that, but I guess if they are on the team for a couple of years, they do pick that up. So that's really cool to see. This guy's a 19-year-old. It says 20, but that's because of the birthday or whatever. But his 8-year-old season and his 19-year-old season here. So he'd be too good to play as an OA. A first-round NHL pick wouldn't play an OA season. So this would just be like a half-year rental. So I think I can... I'll look at my assets and see. So I think the best guy to trade for him would be. I don't have too many guys left. Cloud's up in ECHL this year. He was too good to come back for his last year. I could give up. God, it's really hard to give up a guy who's going to be a starter. I could give up. I'd have to give up a really good player for this guy. They would not do it for just like a second and third round picks and stuff. This is the type of player. He'd probably be the best guy in the trade market in real life. This would be a guy that would take probably 3 second round picks and a player. Because in real life, you get those crazy trades for those top 19-year-olds. They give up like 4 second round picks, or like an elite first round pick guy, like a 16-year-old that was first round pick the following year, like a 17-year-old, and then like a couple seconds and a third or something like that. So you either give up like 5 seconds as picks, or you give up a player in like 3 seconds or so. That's kind of generally around the market. Normally, like a pretty good 19-year-old, you'd probably give up maybe just like a second and a third, or maybe 2 seconds of his top guy. But an elite scoring first round NHL pick would definitely take more than that. So I think, you start to get really picky with your own guys when you draft them, so you develop and don't really want to give them up. But I think it would probably be worth it to give up a pretty good player for this guy, because this guy kind of puts you over the top. Forzy's not really developed as well as I was hoping. He's really stunted, but he's also a really good player. Like, he's already a 1.5 star as a 17-year-old. So he's a guy that is going to be all greens in the defensive side, all greens in the skating, and have pretty much mostly greens in offense by the time he's 19. So I don't really want to give him up, but he'd be a pretty nice player for them, I think, because he'd probably be one of their best young players, because they have a really weak core. So he's a guy they could have for 2.5 years, play his rest of his 17-year-old season, and all 18 and all 19 for them, possibly even be an OA. So he could actually have 3.5 years for them, because he's definitely a guy that'll be an OA. He won't get drafted with only 3-star potential. He hasn't really progressed much, so originally he was a guy I thought would be really good by the time he's 19. He almost looked this good when I drafted him, so I thought he would probably be like as good as Gouds, and I'll show you the difference. Like, they were kind of the same player when I drafted him, but you can see how much better Gouds is now. His offense has just taken a big step up from Forzy's there, progression-wise. So I don't want to give up Gouds, but I think Forzy was a guy I would probably be willing to give up. I could probably replace him pretty easily too. I could just probably draft a guy in the first round this year to take Forzy's spot and he was only ever going to be a fourth liner, because I have McDonald and Gouds on the right wing. So the best case scenario that year, I'm really good. When Forzy's 19, I would only have him as like a fourth line anyways. So I think Forzy would probably be the guy to trade, because that would give them a pretty good player for, like I said, 2.5 years, because they're definitely rebuilding this year. They're 8-21, so they're already pretty much out of it. So I think if I was to do a realistic trade, I would have to give up him. And then if you look, I got a couple extra picks I got an extra third this year, an extra fifth, and then next year I have a couple extra fourths I tried to pick up. Because I figured I wouldn't draft many guys last year and this year, because I had taken like a million guys the year before that. So then I would trade most of my picks last year and this year, and then I'd start stocking up again in that 32 draft, because by the time all these guys I have would be like going in their 9-year-old season, and kind of do the turnover that year. So that's why a couple trades I made, I tried to just whip in some late round picks. So if you see, I doubled up in a lot of picks here, because I was anticipating that. So I on the 11th and 10th round picks, and then I picked up an extra fifth and a couple extra fourths. So I've already started accumulating picks for that year. So I've gotten a lot of extra picks that year, but I have no problem trading almost all my picks this year and next year. I want to stick by the rule that says you have to have 2 16-year-olds on your team each year, because it's a development league. And so I do want to keep a couple high picks so I can have those 2 good young players. I don't want to roster 2 like 4 overalls or something. So I want to definitely try to keep like at least a first and a third, or a first and a fourth at minimum to roster, because you can't trade first round picks. But I'm definitely willing to trade maybe like a second, a third, and then like next year's second, and then a fourth. I don't really want to trade draft picks from that year though, because that's the year I really want to stock up. I think I'd almost prefer to trade my third from this year, and then just go with the first and the fourth, and roster that 4th round pick if I can hopefully find a nice player in that round. I'll actually kind of prefer to trade the third in the future though. So yeah, maybe keep that third. 1, 3, 4 would be good, and then the following year maybe trade a third, because I have a shitload of 4th round picks. Yeah, I don't want to trade away everything because I definitely still want to make some trades next year with the having those really good teams next year. I don't really want to void myself all these picks. But I think having a second, and a third, and a good 17-year-old, I think you in real life for that trade to go through, I think you'd need one more player. I don't know. Foreigns don't you can only roster 2 foreign players, so it really cuts the trade market down for those foreign guys. A lot of times their value is a tad less than a normal guy because you do only have 2 spots. So a lot of times the contending teams will already have 2 good foreign players on their roster. So a lot of times in real life, I've seen those foreign players are really hard to trade, and so sometimes they don't fetch as big a return as you would think, just because the fact they are, um, it's same as OAs. You can only keep them. So a lot of the top teams already have 3 OAs. So when you go to trade an OA, unless they're like an absolute superstar that you're willing to like demote one of your guys, it'll kind of lower the trade market a bit. So I think it maybe would be a decently fair trade to trade a really good 17-year-old that's going to be probably like a second liner for them for this year and maybe even like a second first liner guy in the future. 2 seconds and a third. That might be a pretty realistic trade because they'll get 3 good future draft picks out of that and a good player for a team that's 8-21, just trading away a 19-year-old that only has a couple months left. So I think in real life, I think you'd have to pick. I think I'm just kind of convincing myself. If I'm looking at really non-biasedly, I think you'd have to throw one more pick in there, another third rounder. I think a second, and 2/3, or 3 seconds and a third would be a little more fair. So I think I just got to bite the bullet and throw a third in there just to make it fair. I think that's definitely a fair trade. Good 17-year-old and 4 high picks. Definitely for half season rental, but he's worth it. I think. Yeah, I think that's worth it. That guy's really good. He's going to be able to probably be my best offensive weapon next to Dodson on the wing there. Those other wings I have are really elite defensive players, but as an offensive player, your second best player in a typical championship team is definitely worth, I think, giving up a boatload of picks for. That really drives me, though, if you look at it. And again, that happens in real life. A lot of the contending teams will trade away almost all their good picks. There's teams in real life they'll trade away like 5 second-round picks and not have any like second-round picks for like 7 years and stuff after a couple trades. Like Guelph went all in a couple years ago and gave up a ton. In real life, they gave up a second and a third for that really good defensive winger there from Hamilton. And then in another trade, they picked up Nick Suzuki and gave up like a couple seconds and a third and a really good 17-year-old defenseman, Mark Woolley. And then, in I think a third trade, they got an elite defenseman from Flint, a big 6'7", 19-year-old foreign guy, and another guy, and they gave up another couple seconds and a third. Those all 3 trades were like in the same couple months, and that really put them over the top, won then the championship. So those 3 trades, they gave up like 6 seconds and like a bunch of thirds and stuff. So I think those are the moves you got to make and really dry out your system. But next year, if I was to trade Widmer at the deadline when he's 19 to recoup a bunch of assets, I think I could get a couple seconds and a third back for him because he's an NHL draft pick, a third-round pick, an elite 18-year-old forward. So I think next year what I'll do is trade him because he's like the only good 19-year-old on the team next year, and the entire team other than him is 18. So unless I'm like first place and dominating, I'll probably flip him since he'll be like kind of the only player that won't be back the year after where I really want to think I have the best shot at championship. So I think what I'll do is I'll do this trade, and then I'll probably flip back Widmer and get a couple of those seconds back for this draft here that I'm looking at on my screen. Could try to get this second round pick back and maybe a third and then another second in the future or something. And then, so this draft, I'll probably just roll with the 1-4-4 or 1-4-5-5 round picks because I don't really need too many players from this draft. So I think, yeah, this is the trade I'm going to do. But yeah, I'll just maybe peek at it one more time and see if kind of talk myself out of it by looking at some other players. But this one we'll probably do with Agar and grab this winger because he looks pretty elite. I don't want to make this episode go on too long. So definitely I'll take a peek one more time over the guys, and I think most likely I'll do this one though, and we'll make another episode in a month or two after the World Juniors and see where we're at the trade deadline. Potentially, if we're really doing well, make another trade and kind of like even. I don't think that we have too many more draft picks to give up though. I think, but unless I was like 110 in a row and really had a shot at like first place, and I think I could definitely make another trade for another really good 19-year-old, give up a second, maybe a couple thirds from there, and then maybe like maybe something else, and a player or something, get a good 19-year-old again or something. So we'll see, but that's it for now.